Houston. Houston, we have a problem. DJ Apollo has landed. I repeat, DJ Apollo has landed.
2, 1, and go. Thank you for listening to today's episode. My name is Christian Taylor. I am your host, and you are listening to the podcast of Tales of Music and Film. Now, we are going to have ourselves a lot of fun today, just like we always do. We are going to be going on to the topic of music yet again. I've covered the last couple of recordings. I've done a couple of movies. Both of them were the new Ghostbuster movies. And now it's time we get back to music, and we're going to be talking about an album today. And it's going to be a good one. I'm pretty excited to announce what it is. But first, I just talk for a second about what's been going on. So, the first thing I wanted to get out of the way is that if I sound a little more nasally than usual, I've been struggling with a cold for the last week. I think I'm nearing the ending stages of it. What's left's in my throat, so I've been coughing a lot, and the nasaliness is still there, and the occasional runny nose, but it's just that time of the year, so I'll get through it. But it's just more of an annoyance than anything. Like, heck, even recording this episode's being extremely difficult, because I'm constantly having to pause it to cough, so let's see if I can make it through this without hacking my lungs out. So, but anyways, yeah, that's going on. I've just been working relentlessly for week after week, trying to balance my two jobs. But things have been going pretty well, you know. I'm really starting to feel like what it means to be a true adult now. You know, fresh, almost a year out of college, working two jobs, trying to balance my personal life and everything. It's like I'm finally starting to grasp that I'm actually an adult now. So, still in those early stages of figuring things out, so I'll get there eventually. It's all just experience, you know? But in other awesome news, going back to music for a second, I am super excited about this. I don't know if any of you know, but the legendary guitarist Slash, who is the lead guitarist of the band, a fantastic band. He is the lead guitarist for Guns N' Roses, a band I had the most amazing honor of seeing live back in the summer of 2021 at a festival, and it was one of the greatest shows I've ever seen in my life, man. Seeing Axl and Slash up there kicking some butt, it was a beautiful moment to see, and Slash is a magnificent musician. And anyway, he is releasing his 6th solo album, set to release this year on May 17th, and it's called Orgy of the Damned, and that is a pretty odd name, but still, nonetheless, I'm pretty excited for this, because just a few weeks ago, he released one of the songs that's going to be featured on the album, and this song is called Killing Floor, and what's cool about this song is it features lead vocals by Brian Johnson, and it features harmonica play by none other than Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. So it's like you have Slash from GNR playing all the guitar parts, and you have Steven Tyler playing the harmonica, then you have Brian Johnson doing the lead vocals. Like, this is incredible. I never thought I needed to see these three gentlemen play together, but what an historic moment. Like, I've never seen that much talent on a single track. Like, that is amazing. Look, for any of you who've been listening to this show for a while, you will know that AC/DC is my favorite band of all time. They were the very first band I saw live when I was 16, and they changed my life forever. I consider Brian Johnson to be the greatest vocalist in all of rock and roll. His voice, even today, at 76 years of age, like, his voice still kicks butt. He's got some range, man. His voice, it's like sandpaper scratching against like a rusty bucket or something. Like, the raspiness in his voice is insane. I love it. And I listened to Killing Floor literally yesterday for the very first time. I was sitting in my car in the Walmart parking lot just eating my lunch. And there is a YouTube channel I like to watch called Mr. Rock and Roll. If you guys like watching reactions and you want, a genuine reaction from someone who's not acting, you need to watch this guy's videos. Like, he's amazing. Like, watching his reactions to songs and everything, like, you can tell it's legitimate. And the guy is like how I'll be in about 20 more years or something. Like, he's an incredible dude. I'd love to meet him. And I love watching his AC/DC reactions. His favorite band's AC/DC as well. And I watched his video reacting to the music video for Killing Floor. And it was my first time hearing the song. And dude, I was rocking out in my car. Like, this song blew my mind. It was incredible. I'm pretty sure, everybody's probably walking by my car in the parking lot looking at me like, what the heck is that guy doing? I must have looked like a crazy person in my car. But you know what? I don't care. I was jamming the heck out. I don't care. Man, that song was so incredible. If you have not listened to Killing Floor yet, you have to go check it out. It's amazing. But in other news, that's really all I've really got, going on in my personal life at the moment. But things are going pretty good. The only other negative thing going on is that the weather here in my hometown has been god-awful these last 2 or 3 days. We just had a beautiful sunshiny day just a few days ago. Now the last few days, the temperature has dropped all the way back into the 30s. And it's all cold and rainy and icky. It's not positive weather by any means. It's just all nasty and wet, it's just so. Yeah, Illinois weather, you gotta love it. Welcome to Illinois, the state where you can have all 4 seasons in the span of a week. So, yeah. So the next thing I wanted to get into was my history with the Foo Fighters. Now, I'm not really a big, huge, Foo Fighters fan, but I love a lot of their songs, and Foo Fighters is way up there on bands I want to see live. I really want to, because Dave Grohl he's one of my favorite musicians of all time. I'm actually currently reading his book that he just released, a couple of years ago. It's called The Storyteller, and it's Tales of Life and Music, and I'm 120-ish pages in. It's a magnificent book. I love reading musician memoirs. Just last year, I read Brian Johnson's new book, The Lives of Brian, and it was a magnificent book. I think, till this day, it's one of my favorite books. I loved it, and so far, I'm enjoying Dave Grohl's book just as much. And where I am in the story is that it's 1990, and Dave just made a huge decision to leave the band he's currently in called Scream and go audition for Nirvana because he met Chris Novoselic, who is the bass player for Nirvana, and he's driving over to Seattle to go audition. That was how the last chapter ended, so that's where I am in his life story, and it's a magnificent book. I highly recommend you go check it out. And my dad played Foo Fighters music in the house, all the time growing up. I grew up on their music. I've heard their stuff time and time again. And I hope someday I really get to see them live. And the next thing I wanted to say right quick is that I want to dedicate this recording to the late, great Taylor Hawkins. So, Taylor Hawkins was the Foo Fighters drummer for 25 years. He joined back in 1997, and he was with them for 25 years, and he passed away 2 years ago on March 25th, 2022. I still remember, I was a junior in college when he passed away. I still remember entering my dorm room after a long day of schoolwork. I sit at my work desk, I open up my laptop, and the very first thing I see, news-wise, is that he passed away. And I was just in the most disbelief. Like, I just couldn't believe it. Because, like, the band was, like, before he died, like, the band was on top of their game. Like the COVID restrictions and all that have finally been lifted. Bands were allowed to start touring again. And Foo Fighters went out and started touring the minute they could. Like 2021 and 2022, like those years were going so well for them. They were on top of the world. Like the year before this, in 2021, the band was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by Paul McCartney in their first year that they were eligible to. So the rule is with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is that your band has to be around for at least 25 years in order to be eligible for the nomination to potentially get inducted. And these guys got in there first chance they got. And I watched some of the ceremony, and to have Paul McCartney induct you, like, that is an amazing honor. Like, I remember seeing them on the Howard Stern show, and they were asked the question of who would they want to induct them. And I remember one of the band members said they'd love it if Dave Grohl's mom was the one who inducted them, which I think would have been kind of funny if that had happened. But one of Dave's big influences, like many other musicians before him, was the Beatles. So to have Paul McCartney induct the band, I think that was a very, very perfect choice. And so yeah, I want to dedicate this recording to Taylor Hawkins. Like, he passed away from substance overdose, and it broke my heart, man. Like, I was just so shocked. I just couldn't believe it. Like, the guy looked extremely healthy. He was in his he was around the same age as my dad, and he looked just fine. Like, he was on top of the world. It's just like, then he's dead. It was just so sudden and out of nowhere. So I want to dedicate this recording to him. And I'm really heartbroken. I'm never going to get to see the band live with Taylor Hawkins. So rest in peace to Taylor Hawkins, and I dedicate this episode to you, man. And just thank you for all the amazing music that you've given us for the last 25 years. And my big condolences go out to your family. So, we are going to be getting into the album, but first, I thought I would give a brief little history on the band Foo Fighters. So, I got some material here that I found on the Wikipedia page. It's one of my pages that I go to try to find some information on bands. So, in my notes, it reads that the Foo Fighters is an American rock band formed in Seattle in 1994, founded as a one-man project by former Nirvana drummer Dave Grohl. And Dave Grohl, like, after Nirvana had disbanded after the death of Kurt Cobain in 1994, which is 30 years this year, Kirk and the forming of the Foo Fighters, both these events are going to be 30 years old this year. So very fitting that I'm doing this recording now. That's just so crazy to think about. But after Nirvana had broken up, this was the first thing that Dave did after the band broke up, and he wanted to think of some kind of code name to hide his identity, and so he thought of Foo Fighters. And I actually own the CD that these notes are talking about. It was Foo Fighters' official first album. It was a one-man worked on record, and it was just called Foo Fighters. And the album has like this golden space gun on the cover. It kind of reminds me of the ray gun from Call of Duty Zombies. And it's got songs on it like This Is a Call, I'll Stick Around, Big Me, All plus Easy Target, Good Grief, Weenie Beanie, Oh George, Ecstatic, Exhausted, stuff like that. And Dave wanted to think of a code name, like I said, so he thought of Foo Fighters. And he did everything on this. The vocals, the guitars, the drums, everything on this he did himself. And then eventually, so today, the lineup for Foo Fighters now consists of Grohl as the lead vocals and guitar. And then we have the bass player, who is Nate Mendel. And then we have Chris Shiflett and Pat Smear as the guitar players. Then you have Rami Jaffe on keyboards and Josh Freese on drums. He is now the new drummer of the band after Taylor Hawkins passed away, and I think he's doing a really good job filling in the shoes of Taylor Hawkins. So prior to the release of the Foo Fighters' 1995 eponymous debut album, Grohl recruited Mendel and William Goldsmith, who played drums, both formerly of Sunny Day Real Estate, and Smear, who had played and recorded with Nirvana. Pat Smear was a guitar player for Nirvana's last album called In Utero, and Pat toured with them on that album tour. And he also played with them for their Unplugged concert, which is a fantastic album. The band made their first public performance in February of 1995. Goldsmith quit during the recording of their second album, which was The Color and Shape. I have that CD as well. It's pretty good, too. Most of the drum parts were re-recorded by Grohl. Then Smear departed soon afterward. Now, that's new information. I mean, I thought Pat was like a solid member ever since he joined the mid-90s, but apparently not. So this is new information to me. So Smear and Goldsmith are replaced by Franz Stahl, who is a guitar player, and Taylor Hawkins, who drummed. Stahl was fired before the recording of the group's third album, There Is Nothing Left to Lose, which came out in my birth year, 1999. The band briefly continued as a trio until Shiflett joined after the completion of There Is Nothing Left to Lose, solidifying the core of their lineup. The Foo Fighters released their fourth album, which was One by One in 2002. It was followed with the two-disc In Your Honor 2005, which was split between acoustic songs and heavier material. Foo Fighters released their sixth album, Echoes, Silence, Patience, and Grace, in 2007. Now we continue with the history a little bit. The Foo Fighters' seventh studio album was Wasting Light, which came out in 2011, and this one was produced by Butch Vig. Smear returned as a full member after having appeared frequently with the band since 2005. Sonic Highways, which came out in 2014, was released as the soundtrack to the television miniseries directed by Grohl. Concrete and Gold came out in 2017, was the second Foo Fighters album to reach number 1 in the United States, and the first to feature Jaffe, who was their longtime session and touring keyboardist, as a full member. Their 10th album, Medicine at Midnight, was released in 2021. It was the last album that featured Hawkins on drums before his death, like I said, in March of 2022. After Freese was announced as the band's new drummer, they did their 11th album, But Here We Are, which was released in June of 2023. Foo Fighters have won 15 Grammy Awards, including Best Rock Album 4 times, making them among the most successful rock acts in Grammy history. In 2021, the band was announced as recipients of the first ever Global Icon Award at the 2021 MTV the Video Music Awards. So these guys, honestly, at this point, have nothing left to prove. I think they've proven time and time again that they are a solid band. And they have done outstanding things during their career, and they are a magnificent band. And I think the reason why this band means so much to people is that they helped heal the souls of all the 90s, teenagers that, went through a lot of heartache with the death of Kurt Cobain. I think Dave starting out this new band, really did heal the wounds that were caused by Kurt's death. And when Taylor Hawkins passed away, it was a major blow, for all of us music fans, because I think we all had that same feeling of like the Foo Fighters are really keeping that rock and roll style alive, really keeping that energy and songwriting feel of the 90s alive as well. So when we lost Taylor, and we I felt like we were going through the death of Kurt Cobain all over again. Taylor was such a magnificent guy and a magnificent musician, and it was really sad to lose him at such a youngish age. It was just soul crushing. It really was, and that's how I think a lot of us felt when he passed away. So now we're going to be getting into the covering of this album, and we're going to be going through the history of the making of this album and the reception it got when it was released. And so the album we're covering is One by One. It was the fourth studio album by Foo Fighters, and it was released on October 22nd, 2002. I would have been 3. Through Roswell and RCA Records. Production of the album was troubled. Now, this is the big reason why this is the Foo Fighters album that I chose to cover, because the making of this album was it was not fun for these guys, and the making of this record, it almost, and I'm talking almost, separated this band. We got close, man. They almost broke up. We got close because of how high the stress levels got during the recording of this. And we'll get to the production of this album here in a second, but that was the main reason why I wanted to go with this one. So the production of the album was troubled with intentional recording sessions considered unsatisfying and raising tensions between the band members. They eventually decided to redo the album from scratch during a 2-week period at frontman Dave Grohl's home studio in Alexandria, Virginia. The album, which includes the successful singles of All My Life, I really like that song, and Times Like These is my favorite Foo Fighters song, and I'll get more into it later. These two have been noted for its introspective lyrics and a heavier, more aggressive sound compared to the band's earlier work, which Grohl said was intended to translate the energy of the Foo Fighters' live performances into a recording. This was the first album recorded with Chris Shiflett as part of the band. It was the first in which Grohl did not play drums, as drum duties were permanently assigned to Taylor Hawkins. The album was a commercial success, topping the charts in Australia, Ireland, and the United Kingdom, and sold over 1 million copies in the United States. One by One was positively received by critics, who praised its sound and production, and won a Grammy Award for Best Rock Album in 2004, and it was the second for the band at that time. So, I mean, it all ended pretty well for them. They got that Grammy win, solid record, good record sales, but, you know, it almost didn't all end well, like I said, and this album almost broke the band up. So now we're going to be getting into some of the production history and try to get into, you know, like why things got, you know, so intense between the members. So frontman Dave Grohl began working on new material for the band's next album as early as 2000 during the band's tour promoting There's Nothing Left to Lose. Following the tour, the band started to compose songs for their next album in early 2001. After demo work in drummer Taylor Hawkins' home studio in Topanga, the band used the second quarter of 2001 to perform in European festivals. In August, after performing in Chemford's V Festival, Hawkins suffered a heroin overdose that left him in a coma for 2 weeks. Now that right there just breaks my heart, because I had no idea that Taylor Hawkins, you know, did drugs. You know, I legit thought that, you know, him and the other band members were clean. When I heard that he passed away from a substance, you know, overdose, I thought it just felt completely out of nowhere. But, you know, apparently, you know, that was not his first time, you know, having complications with substances. And that just breaks my heart. You know, there's one thing that, you know, the take away from this is that, you know, don't do drugs. Now, I know it's easy for me to say, I'm not a rock musician, I don't tour the world every couple of years, but no matter what the job is, no matter how stressful it gets, like, never do drugs. It never ends well. It enhances the negative feelings that you already have. You're just under the illusion that it's going to help you, you know? It's all illusion and mind games. It doesn't help you, and it just makes your health worse, and it puts you at risk of dying, you know? And it's just not worth it. There are better and healthier ways to deal with the stress that you're going through. So, I mean, I say this from my heart, you know, please don't do drugs. And after taking time off to recover, during which Grohl accepted an offer to play drums for Queens of the Stone Age on their album Songs for the Deaf, the band got together in October of 2001 to continue composition. And that was one thing I wanted to mention, is that I remember one time, a month or two ago, my family and I were having dinner, and Dad and I were talking about Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters, and we were happened to be talking about, the tenseful recording session of this album, and Dad was telling me that Dave Grohl almost joined Queens of the Stone Age and became their new drummer. He almost did. Now I don't know the history to why they needed a new drummer for this particular album. I might cover this on the show one day. I'm thinking about it. This is a great CD, by the way. You think I ain't worth $1, but I feel like a millionaire. No one knows. First, it giveth, Song for the Dead, The Sky is Fallen, 6-Shooter. I mean, I could just go on. This album by Queens of the Stone Age, it's incredible. And Dave Grohl has proven himself to be an amazing drummer time and time again. If you want to hear how amazing of a drummer Dave Grohl is, go listen to the album Nevermind by Nirvana, or listen to any of his drumming on the Foo Fighters songs, or I would highly recommend listening to Songs for the Deaf by Queens of the Stone Age. Man, he is a amazing drummer. And he almost joined these guys, and I'm happy things all worked out. But like I said, just more evidence. He was willing to leave Foo Fighters to join Queens of the Stone Age. That tells you, things were getting pretty bad, for him to get into that mindset. So during November and December, they had been recording at Grohl's Studio 606 in Alexandria, Virginia, working with both the producer for their previous album, Adam Kasper, and recording engineer Nick Rescolinish. Now, I apologize if I said that name wrong. Whom they met after he had engineered A320 for Godzilla the album. Rescolinish had just left his job at Sound City Studios and speculated that Grohl, having found difficulty in finding a guy who would commit to sitting in his basement for 4 months, picked him for his energetic and enthusiastic nature. Now, there's one thing that I love about Dave Grohl is how enthusiastic he is and how energetic he is. If you watch any of the Foo Fighter live shows, Dave has insane energy. I mean, Dave's in his mid-50s, man, and he performs like he's in his mid-20s or something. He's not letting his age slow him down in any kind of way. He is living the rock and roll dream. And he makes that perfectly clear in his book. This is what he was always meant to do, man. Dave Grohl he's not your average musician. Little side note, one of my favorite things that Dave Grohl ever said once, and this is one of the moments that made him one of my favorite musicians. He was talking about when Nirvana's Nevermind album was released and when it got super big, he was getting a good amount of money, and he was talking to well, when Nevermind got big, and I got some money, I blow all of it on girls and cocaine. For me, I was just sitting there oh wow, I can buy me a bigger grill. The minute he said that, I was that's me. If I was some, rich rock and roll musician, I'd be buying, Lego sets or movie posters or VHS tapes and stuff. That's what I would be buying. For anyone who doesn't know, Dave Grohl really likes to grill in his spare time. One of my favorite things that I love that he does is the charity work that he does. I've seen that during the last couple of years, he's done a lot of grilling for victims of disasters that happen in their cities. He'll grill for hours and hours, feeding as many people as possible. And I love that so much. He really is a humanitarian person, and he loves helping people. That's something about Dave Grohl that I absolutely love. It's how much good he does for others. And anyway, so back to the material here. So the progress of the Virginia session started to become stale So with 6 tracks finished in January 2002, the band moved to Los Angeles Conway Studios for a change of scenery. 29 songs were recorded, including the one featured in the film Orange Country and released as a standalone single, and 10 finished tracks that were considered for the upcoming album. The sessions took 4 months and cost up over $1 million US. It was the first Foo Fighters album produced with Pro Tools, on which the band members have recorded separately. The recording sessions were considered unsatisfying. Hawkins said that nobody had their studio chops together. Grohl considered that the band was lacking enthusiasm and were too focused on production, adding that he felt the rough mixes sucked a lot of the life out of the songs and sounded like another band playing our songs. The tensions were escalating at this point as arguments broke out in the studio. Hawkins even said that he didn't feel we were much of a band as there was much animosity among the band members. Bassist Nate Mendel said that he was in a bad attitude during the sessions due to the disagreements with Grohl, and guitarist Chris Shiflett added that he felt he would at times spend whole days in the studio without playing anything at all. The band also showed disappointment with the 10 songs that merged from the sessions, as Hawkins described the finished tracks as million-dollar demos, and Grohl considered the recordings far too clean, too tame and boring. Now, I understand where Dave Grohl is coming from, because there have been some instances, like for me, when I listen to some band's material and I just think that, okay, this is like way too clean and polished. And I would make that argument with a lot of today's artists, is that today's new artists, like their material is just way too clean. And so I understand 100% with that comment, that what Grohl was talking about. Like, that would bug the heck out of me too. The band only liked 5 out of the 10 songs and thought that the listeners would enjoy the other 5 anyway. Grohl was afraid to promote the album because of his lack of confidence in it. After manager John Sylvia listened to the recordings, he agreed that it was not a work that represented the band well, and that we can release it now, but I don't know if anyone would want to buy it. So, I mean, I can just imagine, like, can you imagine the frustration? Like, I'm trying to, like, look at this from the perspective of the band members. Like, you work your butt off for 4 months straight, and the material you have concluded with is not up to the standards of what you've done before. Like, for me, it would just feel like I just wasted 4 months of my life, and not to have, like, that, you know, that confidence that you know what you're doing, and like the excitement of making new material. Like, if that's gone, like, for me, if I'm a musician, I would just love getting the enjoyment of writing new material and getting to play in a studio with my fellow band members who are like friends and family. But to spend 4 months working on all this stuff, to have a disappointing turnout, like, dude, my frustration would be very bad too. So I understand, like, where they're coming from. Like, imagine working so hard on something and it's not up to the standards that you're used to. That would suck big time. So the notes go on to say, so in April of 2002, the band discarded the recordings and took a break. The members then each started individual projects. And, and Dave actually did tour with Queens of the Stone Age for the album that we discussed earlier. Shiflett started the Viva Death and Jackson projects with his brother Scott, and rejoined his former band Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. Hawkins played with Jane's Addiction. Bassist Eric Avery and Mendel both played with Juno and reunited with his former bandmates William Goldsmith and the Fire Thief. Later on April, they reunited for the Foo Fighters' scheduled concert at the 2002 Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival, which Grohl felt could be the last the band would perform. During the rehearsals, tensions broke out in huge fights, especially between Grohl and Hawkins. Now that was a big shot to me, looking over these notes for the recording. Like I can't imagine, Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins getting into a fight because Dave. If you look at any interviews with him and Taylor, like they were best friends, and they're like brothers and. Well, I guess brothers do get into fights sometimes, but I mean, they're like, John Lennon and Paul McCartney, they were best friends. I mean, I can't imagine, like, me and my best friend, Jonathan, which, for any of you who've been listening to the show for a long time, you'll remember I invited him on last year, and we covered the original Godzilla film. Jonathan is my brother, man. He is my best friend. I would help him with anything. Like, he ever called me asking for help, I'd head to his house straight away. Like, I can't imagine, him and I ever getting into, like, a very aggressive fight, I love that man to death, and he is one of the few friends I'll ever need. He's a fantastic human being, and I'm forever grateful to call him my best friend. Like, I am honored to call him my best friend. He's one of the coolest guys I've ever met in my life. I just can't imagine him and I getting into fights. I don't know if it's common for best friends to get into fights sometimes. Like, I don't know how common that is, but that really shocks me that Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins would get into, very heatful fights. But anyway, the musicians decided to at least perform this show before deciding whether to continue playing together or to end the band. After enjoying their performance, the band members decided to remain united and returned to re-recording the album. Now, man, you want to talk about a miracle happening. Like, that one show, saved this band and made them realize that it's a bad idea to break up. We need to stay together. Like, whew, man, to say we cut things close is a major understatement. So Grohl decided to take a 2-week period before the QOTSA went on tour to work on the Foo Fighters record. And after consulting with Raskolnikov, it was decided to promote him to producer. First, Grohl visited Taylor Hawkins in Topanga to rework the songs that had already been done and show new compositions such as Times Like These, Low, and Disenchanted Lullaby. Then Grohl and Hawkins went to Virginia to redo the drum, vocal, and guitar tracks across a 12-day period, and Medel and Sheffield were later called to record their parts in Los Angeles, the Hook Studios, which were mostly done with the supervision of Raskolnikov. And as Grohl had to go back to QOTSA, the only remaining track from the original sessions was Tired of You, which features a guest appearance by Queen guitarist Brian May. 2 of the demos would leak online in 2012, with the other 5 unreleased demos being leaked on Reddit in 2015. So, the title, One by One, taken from a lyric on All My Life, and for which the spelling 1 times 1 was also considered, was chosen according to Grohl because it somehow made sense. It even worked as a reference to relationships, one person by another person, or one after another. The singer added the word one is frequently used in the album's lyrics, meaning either loneliness or continuation. Now, the next thing I wanted to cover was the reception the album got upon release. But I wanted to take a minute just to throw in my 2 cents on the album. So, personally, I don't think the album, the new version of it, I don't think it sounded, like too clean or anything. For me, it does have, like, how do you say it? That early 2000s sound, like, if I didn't know the year this was released. I can tell by the sound of it. Like, when you listen to stuff, if you listen to, like, the sound, you can, like, pinpoint, the decade or time era it was released. And for this, it really had that early 2000s sound, which is not a bad thing by any means. And the songs didn't sound too clean or polished up. There was some rawness to it, if you want to say that, or there was some, I don't know, dirt to them, if you want to use that term, like grittiness. They didn't sound too cleaned up. And they felt like real music, to me. I mean, I thought the songs that I listened to were really good. I would listen to them again, I think this album is a lot better than what people give it credit for. I don't think the guys have anything to be frustrated about, to tell you the truth. If I ever met them, I would be like, guys, it's okay. This is a good record. Like, you did a good job. Like, don't bash it so much. Like, you guys did a good job. I know, like, when you're an artist, you are, like, you are your own worst enemy. And recording this podcast and all the work I did in college, like, I understand. Like, I am very critical of my work. And I have a bad history sometimes of setting up, like, very high and very unrealistic standards that'll just leave me disappointed time and time again. I do amazing work, but I keep setting myself to these standards that are way too high and ridiculous, and it ruins the experience of making whatever project it is that I'm working on. So it took me a good while to really let go of all that and just make your project and just have fun and enjoy the outcome. Like, don't set your expectations so high. And I still have trouble with it, but I'm a lot better now than what I was a year or two ago. Now, my favorite songs off of this, like the opening song, All My Life, oh man, great song. Great song. I really enjoyed that one. What I really enjoyed about that song the most was Dave Grohl singing on it. I mean, like, I always praise Grohl for his drumming, but the dude's got a very amazing singing voice. The guy screams his lungs out time and time again at every live concert he does, and I'm surprised the guy can still talk, Like, this guy has been screaming his lungs out, since 1995, like almost 30 years, and he's still touring and kicking butt to this very day. And I love the way he sings his voice on this one. Like, the track opens up with this lower, like he's singing in a lower tone and stuff, and that was very nice. And now the big song that I wanted to talk about, I'll get to here in a minute, but a few other honorable mentions I wanted to give was I really did enjoy the song Low, which is track number 2. That was a really good one. And Have It All, like, again, other examples, like they sounded really gritty to me. And again, they didn't sound like too polished up or clean or anything. And I thought they turned out really good. Like, again, I would listen to these tracks again in a heartbeat. And I loved the way the guys played those songs. Like, I mean, I thought it reached their previous work. Now, the song that really got me was Times Like These. So, I have the Foo Fighters Greatest Hits CD. And just a few months ago, I was giving it another listen because I never really gave Foo Fighters a chance, and I revisited that disc again, and I'm loving their material so much more. And not too long ago, the song that I fell absolutely in love with is Times Like These. I noticed that that's a song that I frequently turn to listen to whenever I'm sad or depressed. I mean, I deal with depression a lot, and music has always been my stress tool to use whenever I'm in a bad state, and music always helps me every single time. Like, rock and roll has legit saved my life countless times, and it never fails to lift my spirits. And Times Like These, what this song says to me is that, whenever you're in a horrible situation, like times like these, you learn to love again, you learn to live again, you learn to give again. whenever I listen to the lyrics on this one, it really, really hits me. And I mean, he's right. I mean, whenever I'm in a bad state of mind or if I'm sad, this song really speaks to me. And I love the guitar play on this one. Dude, the riff on this song is so beautiful, and it has like this inspiring and hopefulness to it. Like, the darkness will only be there for a while. Like, the sun's gonna come out again, Like, it was just so inspiring. Like, it reinstills hope in me every time I listen to that song. And it's my favorite song off this album. No doubt about it. It is the best song, in my opinion. Now, all my life, close second. Great song. Great way to open up the album. And go and have it all in low. My dude, great stuff. Great music. But Times Like These is definitely my favorite. There's no competition. And I remember a couple of years ago, back in 2021, when the Foo Fighters were doing the first big show in honor and remembrance of Taylor Hawkins. I remember Dave Grohl had gone to the microphone and they were performing Times Like These. And they barely got into the song when Dave Grohl started having a major breakdown. He started crying because I read a comment from one of the videos that was from the video that was captured of this event, and someone with a comment. It's like at that moment, I think Dave may have finally realized what those lyrics were talking about. Like, when he got up there and started singing, I think they got like maybe 30 seconds into it and he started crying, and like he literally stopped and he had to bring himself back. He had to stop for a second, and he had to recoup, and get things together. I can't imagine like how difficult that show was for him, because he lost his best friend. Now, I have no idea what that feels like. I don't want to know what that feels like. That has got to be some of the worst heartbreak you could ever go through, Like, I can't imagine losing a close friend. Like, that would absolutely destroy me. And it was very hard to watch, too, but what really got me is that they were doing they were doing a slower version of Times Like These, and I could see a guy was holding out a lighter, and everybody was cheering for Dave, and he just had to step back and regather himself, and continued playing. But that just shows you he truly lost his brother, and he was going through some serious pain. I think he's doing a lot better now, but I don't know if that's something you ever get over. The last few years, it's been really hard for Dave. Like, his mom passed away a couple years ago, and I'm reading his book, and he mentions time and time again that his mom she was not just his mother. She was one of his best friends, and he always went to her for advice every single time he needed help, and she always supported him with wanting to be a musician, and with her gone, it breaks my heart. She was such a huge inspiration on him, and I can't even begin to imagine like what he's going through. But I'm so happy that Dave has his wife and his 3 daughters. So if anybody can help him get back to a happier state, it's them. He has a beautiful family, and I have no doubt they'll help get him back to, a happier state. He seems to be doing a lot better now. I saw this really cute TikTok video that him and his daughter Violet did recently, and he looks like he's, old school Dave Grohl again. So I'm very happy to see him doing a lot better. But yeah, Times Like These is my favorite song off this album, and I will be listening to it for the rest of my life. And I really hope I get to see Foo Fighters live, because I want to hear what this song sounds like live. It's got to be like a whole other experience. Like I can imagine I'll get like full body chills or something if I ever get to listen to this live. But yeah, favorite song on the album. It sounds so beautiful, and it is a work of music writing art, as far as I'm concerned. So that I just want to talk about those few songs that struck a chord with me. So now we're going to read a couple of reviewers and their thoughts on the album. So let's get into some critical reception for a second. So one by one, when it was released, it received generally positive reviews from many music critics. At Metrionic, a website that assigns a normalized rating out of 100 to reviews from mainstream critics, the album received an average score of 75, and it was based around 19 reviewers. For example, Entertainment Weekly, Ken Tucker rated the album an A-, calling it full of unexpected exhilaration and liking the exploration of various relationships on the lyrics. And that's something I agree with. Like, the lyrics for the songs that I mentioned earlier, they sounded a lot different, and it sounded really newer and more experimental. Like, they were trying to write their songs in different ways this time, maybe even touching upon some subjects unintentionally, maybe. That's what it felt like to me. I mean, the messages that I was getting of, like, I was getting some, like, hope, things will get better vibes with these songs that I listened to off of this album. And I didn't really sense, like, any darkness necessarily, not from the songs that I listened to. It was giving me a lot of hopeful vibes, which is very good. The Austin Chronicle reviewer praised the heavy sound of the album, saying it drifted from the lighthearted tone of songs such as Big Me while retraining their metallic instincts. But however, many reviewers felt that the album was not up to the standards of the Foo Fighters' previous work. Stephen Thompson of the AV Club described One by One as mostly middling, sticking to slick, pounding, functional rock that doesn't dig much deeper than the usual spleen venting and loud, quiet boarding to bluster formula. BBC's Nick Reynolds found the record inconsistent, praising the first 4 tracks, but saying the following songs did not maintain the same quality, and concluding that although One by One is a good record, it may frustrate the listener. And lastly, Eric Carr of Pitchfork was very critical of the album, saying it was overproduced and the songs are weightless, anti-Semitic cuts with skillful composition but lacking strength and character. Now, I disagree with that. I mean, for the songs that I listened to, now granted, I didn't get to listen to the whole thing, but the songs that I listened to, especially those first 4 tracks, I mean, they sounded really good. So, I mean, with any album, I mean, it's kind of a rare thing where an album is exceptionally good from beginning to end. There's only, like, I would say 3 or 4 albums that I've listened to where I could say 100% it's a perfect album. Like AC/DC's Back in Black. That album, all 10 songs I can listen to every single day. There's only a few albums, like I said, that I'll listen to from beginning to end, where it's like every track is amazing. But most albums will feature like 3 or 4 songs that are kind of okay-ish. I mean, the Rolling Stones are a prime example of this. Like, if you listen to any of their albums, like what they do is they'll write like the 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 songs that really mean something to them. Then everything else on the album is just kind of filler. And I'm sure they're not the only ones who do this, but the Stones are like one of the prime examples that I could think of. I think they're very well known for writing 2 or 3 songs that are the important ones, and everything else is just kind of filler so they can make a full album. While the band had a positive opinion about the record following release, as Grohl said, the songs were the best we've ever written, and he and the rest of the Foo Fighters eventually grew distasteful about the results. Grohl stated that he was frustrated at himself for rushing on the album. 4 of the songs were good, the other 7 I've never played again in my life. Taylor Hawkins said that if you think about things too much, they kind of get sterile, as we found out there. And Shaflett declared that they are great songs, and there are parts of great songs. So overall, I guess they do kind of have like a love-hate relationship with this album, but I think overall, I mean, the first 4 songs were obviously the best. There's no doubt about it. I mean, those were the 4 that I wanted to talk about. But I don't. But still, even with those 4 songs, I think the album is still good overall. So the album debuted at 3rd place on the Billboard 200 with 122,000 copies sold in its first week, and spent 50 overall weeks on the chart. By 2011, One by One had sold 1.333 million units in North America, being certified platinum by the IRAA. The international release was also successful, with the NCA announcing One by One had surpassed 2 million copies worldwide in January of 2003. The album debuted at number 1 in the United Kingdom and Ireland and Australia, and outsold predecessor There Is Nothing Left to Lose in Australia, Japan, and various Asian markets. So, safe to say, this album was a very successful release. I mean, heck, when you sell 2 million copies, I think that pretty much solidifies, hey, you guys got yourself a good record on your hands. And let's see here. The lead single, All My Life, had been released on September 7th, and the band issued 3 more songs as singles in 2003, which were Times Like These, Low, and Have It All. BMG became partners with telecom firm O2 and music provider Musicway to promote the album in Europe with a special campaign focused on cell phones. And one last thing I wanted to mention about some cool details about this album. There were 3 musicians, like 3 additional musicians that had like cameos on this, and you heard earlier, Brian May, lead guitarist from Queen, he played guitar on Tired of You, and Chris Novoselic, who was the bass player for Nirvana, he was backing vocals on Walking a Line. And lastly, we have Greg Bissonette, who played drums on Danny Says. So that's pretty cool. That's some additional musicians. I really do enjoy when bands feature other famous musicians on their albums. I really enjoy that. It's very cool stuff. I love seeing appearances from other musicians on albums. It's pretty cool. Kind of a contribute, I love that stuff. So that pretty much wraps it up for the covering of One by One. It's a very mixed album, I get that. But for me, even though those four first songs are the best parts, and I will say they are the best songs, I really enjoyed listening to those. Now, granted, I didn't get to listen to the entire album, but those first few songs really did speak to me, and I really enjoyed them. Now, those 4 songs were the best, but that doesn't mean that this is a bad album by any means. I like the sound, and I think everybody played their hearts out on it, and I think it's a good, well-made studio album. And the rating I would give it, in all honesty, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I like this album, I really do. And actually, whenever I get some free time, I'd like to hopefully get to listen to the rest of it. I think it's a great album. I like it. And I think the band should be proud of themselves. And I'm very honored that I got the opportunity to finally cover, a Foo Fighters album. I've had it on the list, for a good while now. So I hope that you listening enjoyed this covering of the album. I'm still trying to get the mojo back on how to cover albums. I think I'm stepping in the right direction. So, I guess like I mentioned earlier, it's all just experience. So I'll continue improving myself with each recording. So I just want to say thank you again for listening to this recording, and I hope that you got some joy out of this, and I hope you learned something cool from this as well. And to you listening, I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for your amazing support and helping me do this dream come true. I love getting to host this show, and it's all for you fellow listeners. So thank you for listening to this. You take care of yourselves and have an excellent day wherever you are. And I hope things work out for you. And if they're not, like I said, things will get better. Because, hey, times like these, you learn to love and you learn to live again, right? So, till next time, I'm your host, Christian Taylor. And you are listening to the Tales of Music and Film.